The disappearance. The sun of Corvax forrose slowly over the giant dragon sanctuary, sending long shadows across the stone nests and glowing pools. Normally, mornings here were loud. Hatchlings chirping, guardians roaring greetings, wings crashing like thunder. But today, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Elder dragons stood frozen around the queen's chamber. Their scales glittered like fire under the morning light, yet their bodies were tense, their claws digging lines into the floor. No one dared speak. No one dared move. Something unthinkable had happened. The queen's 3 newborn hatchlings were gone. The queen herself, a massive emerald dragon named Valara, stood at the center of the chamber. Her wings were half spread, trembling with rage. Smoke escaped her nostrils. Her golden eyes searched every corner of the nest again and again, refusing to believe what she already knew. Her children were missing. "My guards," Valara growled, her voice shaking the walls. "Tell me again." The head guardian lowered his head so deeply his horns scraped the ground. "Great Queen, the hatchlings were here last night. We checked on them at third moonrise. They slept peacefully. There was no sign of danger. No one entered. No one left. The doors were locked. The aura shields were active. Then how do you explain this emptiness?" Valara roared. The guardians shrank back as her fury filled the hall. Some dragons whispered prayers. Others silently prepared for the worst. When a dragon mother loses her children, the entire planet feels her pain. One young guard, barely grown, stepped forward with shaking legs. "My queen, we checked the cameras. All 20. He swallowed. They show nothing. No movement. No shadows. The hatchlings simply vanish." The queen's growl turned deeper, a sound that made even the stone walls crack. "Nothing does not steal my children." Outside the chamber, the sanctuary workers began to panic. Dragon horns blared across the entire colony, an emergency signal that had not sounded in 50 years. The sound echoed through the metallic walkways and glowing towers of Corvax, reaching humans, aliens, and dragons alike. People rushed from their homes. Soldiers took positions. Scientists hurried into labs. Search pods lifted into the sky like silver fireflies. Word spread fast. The royal hatchlings are missing. The planet trembled with fear. The elders moved quickly, forming a circle around the queen. Elder Soreth, old and wise, stepped forward. His deep blue scales shimmered in the dim light. "If the hatchlings die before bonding age," he said softly, "your heart fire may break, my queen. And if your heart fire breaks..." He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone already knew. A dragon queen in grief could burn the entire colony into glass. Valara's eyes softened for a brief moment, the pain clear in them. But then she stood tall and commanded, "Search everywhere. Search every mountain, every river, every tunnel." "Yes, my queen," the guardian shouted. But just as they began to leave, another guard hurried in with a sharp bow. "My queen, we found a trace." Everyone turned. The guard held a small container filled with tiny metallic dust, sparkling silver particles. "Aura metal," Elder Soreth whispered. "From the ancient vents?" The guard nodded. "Yes." And the trail leads down the eastern path toward the human mechanic district. A wave of suspicion spread through the room. "Humans," one guardian hissed. Another narrowed his eyes. "They always touch things they should not." Perhaps one stole the hatchlings. Valara slammed her tail against the ground, sending a shockwave through the chamber. Enough. No accusations without truth. But even she could not hide her growing fear. Dragons rarely trusted humans. Humans were small, fragile creatures. Clever, yes. Curious, too curious sometimes. Always poking around, always inventing, always repairing machines that dragons did not understand. If a human had taken the hatchlings, would they even know how delicate dragon newborns were? Would the hatchlings survive? The queen closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, her voice was cold and powerful. "Send search teams to every human district, but do not harm anyone. I want truth, not chaos." The guardians bowed. Teams launched into the sky, flying low over market streets, repair centers, hangars, and scrapyards. Soldiers on hovercraft rushed through narrow lanes. Drones scanned rooftops and alleys. Humans stepped aside nervously as dragon forces stormed through their areas. But the hatchlings were nowhere. Days passed, then weeks. Every hour, the queen's worry grew heavier. She refused sleep, refused food. She spent each night staring at the empty nests where her children once lay. The trail of metal dust had ended mysteriously in the mechanic district, as if something small and clever had slipped into the walls, the vents, the pipes. But no scanners could detect life inside. Rumors began spreading. The hatchlings died. A human kidnapped them. They vanished into another dimension. They were eaten by predators. They never existed. The queen ignored all the voices. She believed, no, she knew, her children were still alive, and she would burn the stars themselves to bring them back. But far away from the grand halls and the searching armies, in a quiet, forgotten garage at the edge of the colony, something small moved inside a dusty metal vent. Something warm, something breathing, something with tiny claws. And the human who worked in that garage had absolutely no idea what was sleeping only a few steps above his head. The mechanic who lives alone. Evan Rook had lived on Korvax for 6 quiet years, and in those 6 years, nothing strange had ever happened in his life. Until the noises began. His garage sat at the end of a dusty road, far from the glowing city towers. No one came here unless their machine was dying. It was old, rusty, and always smelled like burnt oil and cold metal. Evan liked it that way. Peaceful. Predictable. But for the last few weeks, the peace felt wrong. Every night, when he turned off the lights and sat on his small metal bed, he heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Inside the walls. Inside the vents. Above the ceiling. Like tiny feet. He joked to himself, great, now I have super intelligent rats. But deep down, the sounds didn't feel like rats. He would catch small shadows moving in the corner of his eye. Something fast, something warm, something with a faint glow. But every time he turned, nothing was there. Only dust floating in the workshop light. Evan tried to ignore it. He had a broken hoverbike to fix, a shattered Android arm on the table, and his coffee machine kept demanding a software update, which made no sense because it was from the last century. He sighed. Perfect. Ghosts in the vents, and a coffee machine smarter than me. But tonight, something changed. Evan was working under a large cargo hauler, tightening bolts, when he heard a noise so clear it froze him. A soft chirp, not a rat squeak. A chirp, tiny, high, almost musical. He pushed the rolling board out from under the vehicle. Hello. No answer. He grabbed a flashlight and scanned the room. If you rats learned how to sing, we need to renegotiate rent. Still nothing. Just as he turned back to the hauler, something fell from the top shelf. Clang. He jumped so hard he smacked his head on the metal. Ow, seriously? He looked. A wrench had fallen. But why? The shelf was stable, perfectly still, no wind, no vibration. The shadows above the shelf shifted, just a little. Evan aimed the flashlight. All right, mystery creature. Reveal yourself. Silence. He stepped back inside. Maybe he just needed sleep. Maybe. Outside, the colony was burning with tension. After weeks of searching, the dragon forces were growing desperate. Soldiers patrolled every street. Drones scanned windows. Humans locked their doors. Rumors grew louder. The queen will open the inner flames soon. She will destroy the colony. She will blame us. She will burn the sky. But Evan knew none of this. He didn't watch the news. He didn't follow alien politics. The only fire he cared about was the one from his welding torch. He had no idea his quiet life was about to smash into the biggest crisis on the planet. Later that night, Evan finally turned off the lights and stretched on his small bed. The garage hummed softly, machines cooling, tools resting. Outside, a cold wind whistled across the metal roof. He closed his eyes. Thump. He opened one eye. Nope, not dealing with that. Thump, tap, scratch. He groaned, grabbed his pillow, and threw it at the vent. Please go to sleep, whatever you are. For a moment, silence. Then, chirp. Evan sat up straight. That one wasn't inside the vent. It was right above him. He slowly reached for the flashlight again. Okay, if you were a mutated squirrel, I'm warning you, I have tools. He climbed onto his workbench, reaching toward the ceiling vent. The cover was warm. Warm like something alive had been sitting there. He placed his ear against it. Thump, thump. Tiny breathing. A soft purr. Evan whispered, "There's more than one of you." He unscrewed the vent cover slowly, ready to jump back if something leaped at him. The cover came loose, and a small, glowing eye stared at him. Evan froze. It wasn't a rat. It wasn't a squirrel. It wasn't anything he recognized. The eye blinked. Then two more eyes blinked beside it. 3 pairs, all glowing softly, all watching him. Evan whispered, "Oh no, they brought friends." Before he could react, the strange creatures backed deeper into the vent, vanishing into the darkness like smoke. Evan stared at the empty space. What are you?" He didn't sleep that night. While Evan tried to make sense of what he saw, on the other side of the colony, the search teams reported back to the Queen. "No sign of the hatchlings in the human districts," a soldier said. "But we traced the last ornamental dust trail again. It ends at the outer road." The Queen narrowed her eyes. "Where exactly?" "Near an old human garage, my Queen. A mechanic's place." The Queen's wings twitched. "Send a team. Search. Do not leave until you are certain." "Yes, my Queen." She turned, staring at the empty nests where her 3 tiny children once slept. Her voice shook with pain. "Find them," she whispered, "before my heart fire breaks." Meanwhile, Evan stood in the darkness of his garage, staring at the vent. The glowing eyes haunted him. The warmth, the strange chirps, the silent shadows, the missing tools, the stolen food, the dropped wrench. Something was living with him, and it was getting braver. He had no idea the entire planet believed those creatures were dead. He had no idea they were hunted by soldiers, scanners, and dragons. He had no idea they were the most precious beings in the colony. All he knew was simple. Whatever lived in his vents was alive, and it was watching him. What he didn't know was even more important. They had already chosen him. The discovery. Evan had slept maybe an hour, maybe less. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those glowing little eyes staring back at him from inside the vent. 3 pairs, 3 shapes, 3 warm, living things hiding in his ceiling like tiny ghosts. By morning, he was a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. He grabbed a cup of coffee, took one sip, gagged, and tossed it aside. "Okay," he muttered, "today we solve the mystery." He climbed a ladder, flashlight in hand, tools on his belt. His heart thumped with every step. "Please don't be mutant spiders," he whispered. At the top, he pressed his hand against the vent again. Still warm. Still alive. He swallowed. "All right, I'm coming in. Please don't bite." He unscrewed the vent slowly, letting the cover fall into his other hand. A soft wave of warm air drifted out and brushed his face. Then he heard it. A soft, tiny yawn. Evan blinked. "What the?" He lifted the flashlight and aimed it into the vent. Something inside shifted. A shape curled. A tail twitched. A small paw stretched outward. Then the creature stepped into the light, and Evan felt every muscle in his body turn to stone. It was beautiful, small, but shaped like a miniature dragon. Not a lizard, not any creature from Earth. Its tiny scales glowed pale gold, like sunrise trapped under glass. Its wings were soft and folded, too small to fly yet. Its eyes were bright, intelligent, and full of curiosity. It chirped at him. Then another head appeared beside it, and another. 3 small bodies crawled forward, blinking at the sudden light. Evan whispered, "Oh, no way. No, this is not happening." He had seen pictures of dragons before, big ones, the kind that could crush a hover truck with 1 foot. But these were baby dragons. Hatchlings. Royal hatchlings. Extremely rare, extremely powerful, extremely protected, and extremely missing. "Okay," he said to himself, voice cracking. "Okay, Evan. Think fast. You need to call someone. Anyone, right?" But when he reached for his comm device, one of the hatchlings leaped forward like a tiny puff of gold and bit it. "Hey," Evan pulled his hand back. "That cost me a week's salary." The hatchling didn't care. It made a proud chirp and sat on the broken device. The other 2 slid out of the vent entirely, landing on Evan's shoulder with soft thuds. One began chewing on his shirt collar. Another poked his ear with a warm nose. Evan froze, hands in the air. "Don't move," he whispered to himself. "Don't sneeze. Don't scream." But then the third hatchling squirmed forward, slipped, panicked, and fell. Evan gasped and caught the tiny dragon against his chest before it hit the ground. The hatchling stared up at him, wide-eyed. It chirped once, softly. Then it curled its tiny body into his shirt, nuzzling the warm fabric. Evan felt his heart melt instantly. "Oh no," he whispered. "Don't be cute. I can't handle cute right now." But it was too late. The other two hatchlings crawled down from the ladder, spread their wings clumsily, and launched themselves onto Evan's chest as well. They clung to him, chirping, purring, warming his shirt like three little suns. He was now officially a dragon pillow. "Guys," he said weakly, "this is illegal in at least 17 galaxies." And then, boom, the sudden explosion made him jump. The hatchlings tightened their grip, digging tiny claws into his shirt. Dust rained from the ceiling. Something heavy crashed outside. Evan hurried to the window and peeked through the cracks. His breath caught. Dragons. 4 of them. Massive. Winged. Armored. Landing right outside his garage. Their scales glowed like molten metal. Their eyes scanned the area like lasers. Behind them, soldiers in black armor spread out, checking corners, scanning roofs, marking targets. Evan's heart dropped to his stomach. "Oh no, they're looking for you guys, aren't they?" One hatchling peeked out of his shirt and chirped happily. He gently pushed its head back down. No noise. Very bad timing. Another loud crash shook the door. A deep voice growled, "Open this building. Search everything." Evan felt sweat roll down his face. His hands shook. The hatchlings sensed it, crawling up toward his neck, trying to hide behind him. What should he do? Give them up? Hide them? Pretend he hadn't seen anything? He didn't have time to choose. With a sharp metallic groan, the garage door began to open from the outside. Something was forcing it up. The hatchlings panicked and climbed higher, one sitting on his shoulder, another hiding in his hair, and the smallest hugging his chest tightly like he was its mother. Evan whispered, "Why me? Why today? Why dragons?" But there was no escape now. Bright light flooded in as the door lifted higher. 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 And the moment the soldiers stepped inside, their scanners pointed directly at Evan and the 3 glowing shapes on his chest. One soldier froze. "Sir, we found the hatchlings," another shouted, "and they are clinging to a human." The entire room went silent. Evan slowly raised his hands, hatchlings hanging from him like ornaments. "Hi," he said weakly. "This is not what it looks like." It absolutely was what it looked like. And the dragons outside were about to decide his fate. The accusation. The garage door slammed upward with a metallic roar, and a blast of bright noon light filled the dusty room. Evan squinted, blinking fast as armored soldiers rushed inside like a dark wave. Their boots hit the floor in perfect rhythm. Thud, 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 as scanners swept across the walls, tables, tools, and finally him. Evan stood frozen, arms raised, 3 tiny dragon hatchlings sticking to his chest like terrified, glowing magnets. The soldiers stopped. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then one soldier whispered, "By the Queen's flame, he's holding them." Another hissed. The human took the hatchlings. Evan's eyes widened. "Wait, no. They came to me. I didn't take anything." A soldier stepped forward, visor shining. "Drop the dragons." Evan looked down at the hatchlings. They tightened their grip, burying themselves deeper into his shirt. They're not dropping," he said helplessly. The soldier lifted a weapon. The barrel glowed with a dangerous red heat. "Last warning," the soldier growled. "Release the royal hatchlings. They're literally glued to me." Evan squeaked. "Do you want me to peel them off?" Before the soldier could respond, the smallest hatchling poked its head out of Evan's shirt and chirped directly at him. The sound was soft, innocent, and it echoed through the garage like thunder. Every soldier froze. The hatchling's tiny voice carried a message only dragons understood. A message that said, "This human is safe. We trust him. We choose him." And the soldiers hated it. "Impossible," one whispered. Hatchlings do not choose humans. They do not trust humans. They should fear him. They should return to us. But they didn't. The hatchlings clung to Evan even tighter, shaking, wings wrapped around his shirt. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Their scanners beeped rapidly, lights flashing warnings. "Report this," one ordered. "The Queen must know." A soldier activated the comm device on his arm. "My Queen," he said, voice trembling, "the royal hatchlings have been found." There was a pause. "Where?" The Queen's voice thundered through the device. "Are they?" The soldier swallowed. "In a human workshop." "Alive?" she demanded. "Yes, my Queen." Another pause. Longer. Colder. "And the human?" she asked. "He has them on his chest." Silence. Then, "I am coming." The air outside trembled as a deafening roar split the sky. Dust fell from the garage ceiling. Tools shook on the walls. The soldiers, tough as stone moments ago, suddenly straightened with fear and respect. Evan felt his stomach drop. "Oh no, she's coming here." The leader of the soldiers glared at him. "Prepare yourself, human. The Queen does not tolerate thieves." "I didn't steal anything." Evan protested. "They crawled into my vents. They chewed my screwdriver. One of them bit my ID card." "That sounds like guilt," another soldier muttered. "That sounds like survival." Evan shot back. "They were hiding." A deep, rumbling growl echoed across the garage before anyone could speak again. The soldiers stepped back. The hatchlings clung tighter. The ground itself vibrated. A massive shadow fell across the floor. The temperature rose. The lights flickered. And then, boom! The roof above them shook violently as something huge landed outside. Dust rained down. Metal creaked. Evan whispered, "Please tell me that was a very big bird." It absolutely was not. The soldiers dropped to one knee. "Queen Valara," they greeted in unison. Evan looked through the open doorway, and the breath left his lungs. The Dragon Queen was colossal. Scales shimmering emerald and gold. Wings like giant burning shields. Eyes glowing with ancient fury. Her claws dug into the ground with enough strength to crack stone. She stepped forward, her shadow swallowing the garage hole. Evan instinctively took a step back. The hatchlings climbed up his shoulders, as if trying to hide inside his hair. Valara lowered her massive head. Her huge golden eyes locked onto Evan. The world went silent. Evan felt his heart hammering in his chest. His knees nearly buckled. The Queen inhaled deeply, her hot breath washing over him like desert wind. The soldiers watched nervously. No one dared move. No one dared speak. Finally, Valara's voice rumbled through the room. "Human." Evan swallowed. "Why, yes. You have something that belongs to me." Evan's voice cracked. "I noticed." Her eyes narrowed. "Return my children." Evan hesitated. "They won't let go." The Queen's pupils widened. "What do you mean?" she growled softly. "They won't let go." Evan lifted his hands, showing the hatchlings gripping his shirt with tiny claws like desperate toddlers. "I've tried everything," he said. "Trust me." The soldiers exchanged shocked looks. Valara leaned in slowly, her enormous head inches from his chest. The hatchlings chirped softly and pressed themselves deeper into Evan, trembling but refusing to move. The Queen froze. Her eyes softened. She inhaled again, slowly this time, drawing the scent from Evan's shirt. Recognition flickered in her expression. Pain, shock, relief, and something else the soldiers couldn't understand. But Evan could. She wasn't angry. She was afraid. Afraid of losing them. Afraid of why they had come here. Afraid of what it meant that her babies had chosen a human. Finally, she whispered, almost too softly for her size. "You saved them." Evan blinked. "What?" The soldiers looked at each other. Saved? Him? Impossible. But the Queen ignored them. She kept her gaze on Evan and repeated, deeper. "You saved my children." Evan wanted to deny it. He wanted to explain it was an accident. He wanted to tell her he didn't even know what they were until a few hours ago. But the hatchlings held him tighter, and the Queen's eyes held a truth. A bond had formed, a dragon bond, something sacred, something powerful, something no human had ever earned, and it wasn't going to break easily. The Queen arrives. The garage felt too small, to hold the Dragon Queen. Her body filled the doorway, wings folding tightly so she could step inside. Every movement sent heat rolling through the room, like standing near a living volcano. Evan didn't dare breathe. The soldiers didn't dare blink. And the three hatchlings clinging to him didn't dare loosen their grip. Queen Valara lowered her head even more, until her golden eyes were directly level with Evan's. The air vibrated with a low rumble in her chest. She wasn't just looking at him. She was studying him, watching every twitch, every breath, every heartbeat. "Human," she said in a voice that shook the bolts on the walls. "Tell me, how did my children come to be with you?" Evan opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat felt dry as dust. I don't know," he whispered. The Queen's pupils sharpened. "Do not lie to me." "I'm not," Evan insisted. "I really don't know. I found him in my vent. I swear." The soldiers stepped forward, weapons half raised. One growled, "He lies. No hatchling would crawl into a human den willingly." Another added, "Dragons sense fear. They avoid humans. They hate them." The Queen snapped her gaze toward the soldiers. "Silence." They stopped instantly. Then she turned back to Evan, lowering her massive head until her horns nearly touched the ground. "Show me," she commanded. Evan blinked. "Show you what?" "The moment you found them." Evan hesitated. I unscrewed the vent and—" "No," the Queen said softly, but with terrifying weight. "Show me your memory." Evan's stomach flipped. "My what?" Before he could run or argue, Valara gently touched her forehead to his. A shock of warm energy rushed through him like liquid light. He gasped. The world around him blurred. Suddenly, he saw flashes inside his own mind, memories replaying like scenes on a screen. The hatchlings' tiny bodies curled inside the vent, their soft chirps when the flashlight reached them, the smallest one slipping and falling, his hands catching it before it hit the ground, the little creature curling into his chest, the others following, their fear, their trust, their choice. The moment the bond happened, the Queen's massive eyes widened. It lasted only a second, but when Valara lifted her head, everything changed. The garage felt heavier, like gravity itself had shifted. The soldiers looked confused, waiting for her reaction. Valara breathed out slowly, the steam rolling across Evan's face. This time it wasn't heat. It was relief. "You did not steal them," she said. A soldier stepped forward. "But my queen—" "Enough," Valara roared, wings spreading just enough to shake the room. "This human is innocent." Evan felt his knees weaken. Innocent. Probably the greatest word he had ever heard in his life. But the Queen wasn't finished. She looked at the hatchlings, still gripping Evan like he was their living shield, and her expression softened in a way none of the soldiers had ever seen. "My children chose you." The words hit the soldiers like a blast. Several staggered. One nearly dropped his weapon. "Hatchlings choose," a soldier whispered. "Impossible. They only bond with dragons," another muttered. Valara shot them a look that made them snap their mouths shut. "Their scent is on him," she said softly. "Their trust is in him. Their fear calms in his presence." She turned back to Evan. "They slept on your chest." Evan nodded awkwardly. Yeah. I woke up and they were just there." The Queen's heart pounded loud enough that everyone heard it. It echoed like a giant drum. She understood the meaning. For a dragon hatchling, sleeping on someone's chest is the highest sign of trust. It means safety. It means warmth. It means home. Her gaze turned emotional, a rare, vulnerable moment for a creature feared by galaxies. "You saved them from cold," she said. "You gave them warmth when their life fire was weak." Evan froze. "Life fire? Hatchlings are born with small heart flames," the Queen explained. "Without warmth, they die. You kept them alive." Evan's eyes widened. "I did." "You did." The soldiers looked stunned. One bowed his head in respect. Another lowered his weapon. And then something happened that no one expected. The smallest hatchling crawled up Evan's shirt, reached out with a tiny claw, and touched the Queen's nose. The Queen inhaled sharply. "Child," she whispered, voice trembling. But the hatchling didn't move toward her. It pressed itself into Evan's neck instead, chirping softly. declaring, "This human is mine. I belong here. He is safe. He is trusted." The queen closed her eyes, chest rising and falling with heavy emotion. When she opened them, her voice was soft but unstoppable. "Human Evan." Evan swallowed hard. "Why, yes. You have my gratitude." The soldier's jaws dropped. Dragons never thank humans. Never. And then the queen said the words that changed everything. "You will not be punished. You will not be harmed. You will not be questioned again." Evan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But Valara added, stepping closer, "You will come with me." Evan froze. "Come where?" "To the palace," she said. "The hatchlings have bonded with you. I cannot break their choice." Evan stared at her in disbelief. "Me? In a dragon palace?" The queen lowered her head in a gesture of respect, something dragons only did for royalty or saviors. "You protected my children," she said. "Now, you will help raise them." Evan felt his world tilt. A simple mechanic. Alone. Quiet. Ordinary. Chosen by the youngest heirs of a dragon empire. And standing in front of a queen who looked at him not with anger, but with something close to trust. The soldiers bowed around him, clearing the path. Evan whispered, "What have I gotten myself into?" He didn't know the answer, but the hatchlings did. They chirped in perfect unison, as if saying, "You are ours now, and your life will never be the same." The hidden truth. The journey to the Dragon Palace felt unreal. Evan sat inside a giant transport pod, its interior glowing gold from the queen's aura. The hatchlings refused to leave him. Two sat on his lap, and one curled around his neck like a warm scarf. Every time the pod shook, they chirped softly and pressed closer. Evan whispered, "Guys, seriously? I'm just a mechanic, not a dragon bed." The hatchlings disagreed. Outside the pod, dragon guardians flew alongside like armored shadows. Their wings cut through the sky, strong and sharp. Humans on the ground stared up, confused and frightened. Rumors spread instantly. The queen captured a human. No, she spared a human. No, he stole her babies. No, the babies chose him. No one knew the truth. Not yet. When the pod finally landed at the Dragon Palace, Evan felt tiny next to the doors. They were carved from ancient stone, thousands of years old, covered in runes that glowed faintly with dragon magic. Dragons bowed as the queen walked forward, not to Evan, but to the three tiny dragons riding on him. A dragon elder gasped, "My queen, they cling to him still?" Valara nodded. "Their bond is strong." The elder looked stunned. But hatchlings do not bond before the first flame ceremony. "They did," the queen said quietly. The elder slowly turned his gaze to Evan, curiosity replacing suspicion. "Human, you may step forward." Evan looked around. "Are you sure? I step here, I might get eaten by accident." A few dragons snorted dragon laughter. The elder approached him. His deep blue scales shimmered like ocean waves. "Human, do not fear. I seek truth, not your life." "Good," Evan muttered, "because I like my life." But the elder's expression became serious as he looked at the hatchlings. "Show us how they came to you," he said. Evan raised his hands helplessly. "I really don't know. They just appeared in my..." But Queen Valara lifted a wing to silence him. "Not his voice," she said. "His memory." Evan blinked. "Are we doing the brain thing again?" "Yes," the queen said. "Great," he muttered. "If you see embarrassing memories, please skip them." But the queen was already lowering her head, her horn touching his forehead gently. Warm light flooded Evan's mind, and suddenly, the palace vanished. The world faded. EVANSMEMORY, as seen by dragons. A dusty vent. A cold night. Three tiny bodies shivering in the dark. Their scales dim. Their breathing weak. Their life fire fading. They were alone. They were hungry. They were freezing. Then they heard a sound. Clang, clang, clang. A human voice. Evan's voice. "Stupid bolt won't loosen." The hatchlings crawled toward the warmth, toward the sound, toward hope. One slipped through a crack, landing in the vent above Evan's bed. They watched him. For hours. A creature so different from them, yet warm, safe, alive. When the night grew colder, they climbed down. And when Evan finally slept, the hatchlings curled onto his chest, burying themselves into his shirt, absorbing his body heat. His warmth saved their lives. The memory faded. The palace returned, and the dragons stared in stunned silence. One guardian whispered, shocked, they were dying. Elder Soreth shook his head, voice trembling. Their life fire was almost gone. The queen's wings drooped as pain crossed her face. My children, all this time. Evan blinked. They were dying? On my roof. Why didn't they chirp louder? The queen ignored his panic. She looked at the hatchlings, her eyes soft and full of guilt. I failed to protect them, she murmured. I searched the world while they were freezing above a human's workshop. The smallest hatchling chirped and touched the queen's nose, but remained wrapped around Evan's collar. Elder Soreth stepped closer. There is more. Valar nodded. Yes, I saw it. Evan looked between them nervously. Saw what? The queen turned to him slowly. Human, you are not the first thing my hatchlings saw. Evan frowned. What do you mean? Valara closed her eyes. Before they crawled into your vent, they saw something else. Evan's heartbeat quickened. Saw what? The queen opened her eyes, glowing brighter now. Someone chased them, she said. Someone forced them out of the sanctuary. Evan blinked. Someone? You mean? A traitor, the elder whispered. Inside our own walls. Energy crackled through the palace. Dragons growled. Guardians tightened their claws. Soldiers looked ready to burn the sky. Evan felt his stomach flip. So, someone tried to steal the hatchlings? No, the queen said. They tried to kill them. Evan grabbed the hatchlings protectively, pulling them tighter. The tiny dragons chirped and pressed into him for safety. The queen noticed, and her voice turned thunderous. Someone pushed my children into the vents, thinking they would freeze, thinking no one would find them. She stepped closer, eyes glowing like molten gold. But they underestimated a simple human. Evan blinked. Me? Yes, the queen said. You. The elder bowed his head. Human Evan, you changed fate. A guardian added. Without you, the heirs would be dead. Another whispered. If you had slept 1 hour later, they would never have survived. The queen raised her wings high. Because of you, she thundered, my children live. Every dragon bowed. Evan stood frozen, mind exploding. I'm just a mechanic. You are their protector, the queen said, whether you wanted it or not. Evan looked down at the hatchlings, their small, glowing eyes staring up at him with trust so pure it hurt. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a mechanic. He felt like something more, something important, something chosen. The queen lowered her head again. Human Evan, she said, you have earned a place in dragon history. Evan whispered, what does that mean? Her answer was simple and terrifying and world-changing. You will raise them with me. The hatchlings chirped in triumph. Evan nearly fainted, and the dragons roared across the palace. The human caretaker had been chosen, the human chosen by dragons. The dragon palace had never seen a moment like this. Dragons of every age gathered in the great hall, wings stretched in awe, scales shimmering under the golden torchlight. Even the oldest elders, beings who had lived thousands of years, whispered among themselves. A human stood in the center, a human guarded by hatchlings, a human declared innocent, a human chosen. Evan felt tiny under the massive curved ceiling. The palace walls glowed with ancient fire runes that pulsed like living veins. The ground beneath him felt warm, alive. This place felt older than humanity itself. The 3 hatchlings clung to him like vines. One curled around his shoulder. One rested on his arm. The smallest hid inside his shirt collar, peeking out only when it felt brave. The queen stood before him, towering, powerful, but not angry anymore. A strange calm had settled in her eyes. Yet the hall buzzed with tension. Guardians paced. Elders murmured. Soldiers stood ready. Someone had tried to kill the royal heirs. Someone still inside the palace. Evan wasn't just in the middle of a dragon mystery. He was a piece of it now. The queen raised her wings high, silencing the hall. Dragons of Korvax, she began, voice echoing like rolling thunder. You know of the tragedy. My hatchlings vanished. You know of the fear, that their life fires were dying. and you know of the shadows that crept through our sanctuary." The hall fell silent. "But today," she continued, "you will know the truth." She turned toward Evan. Her massive claws tapped softly on the stone as she approached. "Human Evan Rook," she said, "step forward." Evan didn't step. The hatchlings pushed him forward. He stumbled awkwardly. "Guys, please stop volunteering me for things." A few dragons snorted, laughter again. The queen lowered her head until her massive golden eyes were level with his. "My children did not survive by chance," she said. "They did not hide in vents for adventure. They were running." Her voice grew colder. Running from someone who wanted their life fire extinguished. Gasps spread through the hall like sparks across dry grass. A traitor in the palace. A killer among dragons. The queen continued, voice low and dangerous. But someone found them. Someone kept them alive. Someone warmed them when their flames nearly died. Her gaze landed on Evan. That someone was this human. The hall reacted instantly. Dragons roared. Wings flared. Elders bowed. Soldiers lowered their weapons. It was like watching a storm of respect sweep across the room. Evan's ears rang. He whispered under his breath, "This is too much. Way too much. I fix broken engines. I don't save dragon royalty." But the hatchlings nuzzled his arms, chirping proudly. The queen watched the little creatures cling to him, and a rare expression, soft, emotional, grateful, touched her face. She nodded once. "Because of you," she said, "my children breathe." Evan swallowed. "I was just trying to help." "No," Elder Soreth corrected gently. "You did more than help. You became their warmth. You became their safety. You became their choice." The queen lifted her head, addressing the entire hall. "And for that, he is one of us." The dragons roared as one. A deep, powerful sound that shook the palace floor. Evan staggered back. "One of you." No, no, no. I can't breathe fire. I can't fly. I can't lift anything heavier than a toolbox." "You lifted my children when the world failed them," the queen said softly. "That is enough." Evan opened his mouth to argue, but stopped, because the hatchlings were looking at him, not with fear, not with confusion, but with devotion. The little golden creatures pressed close, wings trembling with happiness. And in that moment, Evan realized something. They didn't choose him because he was strong. They didn't choose him because he was special. They chose him because he cared. Something no one else had done when they were cold, hungry, and alone. But the peace didn't last. A deep alarm echoed through the palace. Boom, boom, boom. Dragons instinctively raised their heads. A guardian sprinted into the hall. "My queen," he shouted. "We have found signs of forced entry in the sanctuary's lower vents." The traitor moved during the chaos. Dragons roared in anger. Evan's heart jumped. "They're still here." "Yes," the queen said darkly. "Whoever tried to kill my children fears discovery." Elder Soreth spread his wings. "We must seal the halls." The queen nodded slowly, then turned to Evan. "Human," she said, "the hatchlings trust you more than anyone. If danger comes, they will run to you first. You must stay with them." Evan blinked. "Me? What am I supposed to do if a dragon assassin attacks?" "Throw a wrench at them." The smallest hatchling chirped proudly and puffed one tiny spark of fire. Evan stared. "No, no fire. Last time you tried that, you set my screwdriver on fire." The queen lowered her head again. "They will protect you as you protected them." Evan swallowed hard. The idea of 3 tiny dragons defending him was terrifying, but also strangely comforting. He nodded. "All right, I'll keep them safe." The queen's eyes softened. "And I will find the one who tried to take them." Her wings unfolded, filling the hall with blinding emerald light. "Dragons," she roared, "to the air." A storm of wings exploded upward. Roars shook the sky. The palace vibrated. Evan stood in the middle of the chaos, 3 hatchlings clinging to him like his own heartbeat. And in that instant, he understood. He was no longer just a mechanic, no longer just a witness, no longer just a random human. He was part of a dragon prophecy, a protector, a caretaker, a chosen one. And somewhere in the shadows of the palace, someone watched him with cold, furious eyes. The traitor, the true enemy, the one who had failed to kill the hatchlings, and now saw the human as the only obstacle left. The story was far from over. It was only beginning.